Ready. Hi folks, welcome back to How to CAD Almost Anything, MIT Summer 2026 edition. Today we are in session 7. As you guys all know, this is the asynchronous video, so I don't get to ask you if you have any questions. We'll save those for the in-person session. Instead, I want to jump straight into today's topics, which include assemblies. Finally, we're going to learn how to take different parts and bring them together into an assembly. The reality is that all of the parts that we've covered so far in the last 6 sessions are really assemblies. For instance, even if you look at the pictures that I have in here of all of these 4 different kinds of violins, the string would be a different part, the body would be a different part, the neck in here would be a different part, here the little piece that we use to tighten the strings would be a different part, but we've always done everything as a single part because I think it's more interesting, it's actually simpler, and the whole idea of the previous 6 sessions was to learn the different techniques that you have available in Creo to create a 3D model. In fact, I would actually go as far as to say that it's more challenging to CAD everything as a single part than as an assembly. And the best example to illustrate why that's the case is because if you look at these Chinese erhu, these 2-string violin, I could have done a single part for one of those tighteners in there, and I could have replicated that in an assembly as an example. So that would actually save us some time. Instead, today we're finally going to learn how to create an assembly based from multiple parts. And to achieve that, we're going to do these 2 designs that you see right here. These are 2 kinds of stands. And to give you an idea of the strategy that we'll be pursuing is that we're going to start by first doing this overall structure, which is this pipe in here with the 3 legs. We're going to design each of the different parts individually. Then we're going to bring them into an assembly. And we're going to learn how to create constraints, which is essentially how you would be able to assemble everything together and tell the software where you're supposed to be placing each one of these different parts. And then when it comes from here in the top, we're going to customize it a little bit. For instance, in one case, we're going to create this neck that you can see over here, and it's going to extend upwards by a little bit. And we might even design a cymbal, which is it symbol is like a big brass plate that you would hit with a drumstick, as an example. And so this is the cymbal stand, the one that you can see in the left. For another version of this assembly, instead of cutting that neck, which again, it's going to be its own independent part, we're going to cut this structure in here, which is going to be that black, let's say, this is a bell kit in here, but we're going to cut this black skeleton, and on it, we're going to add each one of these different keys. And in a way, you will start to realize this is like a throwback to session 1 when we did our xylophone, where each one of these different keys were part of the same part. Instead, today, we're going to make them all different, and we will be able to scale them, change a little bit the dimensions, hopefully make things a little bit easier. And yes, you will realize some of the pros and cons of doing things as a single part as opposed to right here where we'll do it as an assembly. So each one of these will be different, because even if you look at that picture in there, each one of those keys will be its own independent part. So that's going to be a little bit tedious, but we'll realize that once we get to that point. And yeah, so this is what I have planned for today. We'll start by doing these 2 designs, but before we do and jump into Creo in just a moment, I'm going to illustrate first how assemblies work. So I'll be cutting 2 little objects, and we'll start illustrating all right, how you're bringing to the assembly environment, how you can put them side to side, establish the relationships between them. And then towards the end, we'll do that, then we'll jump into these 2 designs. And then afterwards, we're going to do engineering drawings, because part of what we'll do today is, all right, we'll have this, but I want to create like an instruction set to tell you how you're supposed to bring everything together. In order to create an engineering drawing that will include potential dimensions and a couple of notes in terms of how you're supposed to build that, we're going to create something that is known as an exploded view, where you take this that it's currently assembled right now in its final form, but it's going to be all exploded with different parts appearing in different areas. And you can indicate, all right, it's supposed to come in this direction, and this is supposed to snap in this particular position, so on and so forth. So what I suggest is that we jump straight into Creo and we get started. All right, so now we're in Creo, which means we can get started. So what I'll do is I'll go here to New, and I'll create a part, and we're going to call this brick. Because for me, the most pedagogical way to teach how to create assemblies is by building little bricks. You could think of these as little Lego bricks as an example. They will be similar. Go here to OK, then we go over to File, then over to prepare, model properties, we'll change our units in here. So I'll go here to change, and we'll go for our usual set. Okay, close, excellent, close. And now what I'll do is I'll go here to sketch, over to this plane in here, I create sketch, so we can create a very, very simple brick, which is gonna look as follows. Go here to rectangle, center rectangle, and we'll make this, let's say, 100, and let's make that 180, as an example. I'll go over to OK, then extrude, and we are gonna make this 50. Okay, so a very beautiful, very simple brick. And then just for fun, I'm gonna do another sketch here on the top. We'll do a construction line that will come like this, and then another regular circle that will come in the middle. Let's make that 60, and we are gonna extrude that by 10. Folks, this is our brick in here. So now I'm gonna save this because it's never a bad time to save, based on our experience losing files in the past. So let's save this brick. And now we'll go over to File, and I'll go over to says New, and we'll create instead our first assembly. So let's call it brick assembly. There we go. I go to OK. Good. So now we're here. The environment is a little bit different than the part environment that we're used to from the prior sessions. Where you click is here, it says assemble. So I go to assemble, then you go to assemble, and then what you can find is our friend, the brick in here, which is the part that we just created. If you add other parts, as we'll be creating in just a moment for the symbol stand, you'll have all of those appearing. So I'll go here to open, and the first thing that will happen is this brick will appear here in space. The reality is that, look, I can move it with these arrows. As you can see, I can also rotate it a little bit. Let me just move it around. I'll go here to OK, just to click to show you the array. These three planes that you see appearing, these are, you could think of these as the reference planes from an assembly perspective. These are like the equivalent three planes that you would have on a part, they also appear in the assembly. And what I like to do whenever I bring my very first part is to constrain the position of that part relative to space. Because as you will see in here, there's like a little rectangle next to the brick here where my mouse is that indicates that I haven't fully constrained that part. One thing I could do, for instance, is click on the part, like if you see it, right click, and there's a command here that's called fix location. If I did that, you see that that little square disappears. That will be fixed in there. If you wanted to constrain a little bit more precisely the position of that, as opposed to just fixing, let me do Control Z. What you could do is go over to brick, and here there's an edit definition. Now, edit definition, in contrast to what we've done previously with the parts, is not gonna edit the part itself. For that, I should go back to that part. Instead, it will edit its position. I can move it around in here, free constraint, or for instance, this is where we're gonna start to introduce how I'm gonna fully define its position. I can click here where it says select component item, I can say that face. And suppose I wanted that face to be flush with that surface. So then now I'll click on that face. And then instead of, well, you could do an angle offset. I could say, well, I want that to be 30 degrees as an example. Like, you see, this is gonna be super powerful. Or I could say, I want these two to be coincident, which means that they're touching each other. They're completely flush. Great. Once you're happy with that, you'll click on new constraint to add a new constraint. So I could say, well, I want now this face and that and this plane in here to be flush with each other. And you see, yes, that's a coincidence. I could also say distance, and I could establish that I want that to be 50 away. Why not? And now if you're happy with that, I'll click on select new constraint. I could also go to this face and then back to that face, and I can make that coincident. Do notice that if I click back on each one of these ones that I just created, you could edit them as well. Once you're happy, click on OK. And now you can see that this is where a brick lies. So I'm gonna click on all of these ones. I will hide them because I don't need to see them. But just something interesting, right? Like this is, now we're fully constraining our brick. You see that little rectangle that used to be there, it's no longer. So now our brick is fully constrained in space. Well, that's great. What else can we do in here? Well, if you right click there and you edit definition, again, you can go back to those set of constraints that you've established, you can edit them. Now here to cancel. Let's bring more parts. If you only have a single brick, as the design that we have in here, there's multiple things you could do. One thing is to click here, do Control-C in your keyboard, Control-B, and you will create a new brick. So if I go to the arrow, I can bring so it's originating from the one that I just created, right? So I can bring a new little brick in here, move it around, and then say, I don't want to establish any constraint. Well, I could establish some constraints from here, so I could say, let me remove that. I can click on that face as an example, and click on that face, and you will see that now it appropriately changes that. I can now, let me remove that face in there, and let me click cancel. Yes, for a second. Let me let me do it again. So I'm gonna do Control-C, Control-V, and I'm gonna drag it out like this. I don't want to do any constraints in here. Automatic. Let me select this face in here. Top. No, I don't want to do top face. Or this face in here, and that one will make it. Oh, coincident. There we go. Now we can do a new constraint. There we go. Remove. Let's do this face and this face in here. Yes, they seem coincident. Let's do one new constraint where I'm going to establish that face and that face in there perfectly. So now, once I've established all of the constraints for this one, the check mark becomes green, which is what I was looking forward to doing. And now I'll click on OK. So now we have a row of 2 bricks. Nothing too fancy, but it's just kind of neat to do that. I can go back again to our brick, do Control-C, Control-B. Oh, not the surface, sorry. I don't want to copy that. I can do now. I'll click there, Control-C, Control-V. I'll drag it out, remove. If I can delete all of the constraints. So now I have to establish constraints again for this brick in here. It's not gonna let you, it's not gonna allow you here to say, click OK, unless you establish a set of constraints. So I'm gonna establish this face and that face, and I bring like that, and I click on OK. So at least now that brick in here, it's constrained, say, on that planar direction, so that plane and this plane, but you see how it has that square showing up in there, which means technically that I can click on this brick, then go to, where is it in here, to drag components. And I should be able to drag this brick around, but only along, it's like as if it was touching this individual face that you see in there. So yeah, I can move this around. I click yes, okay. Click on close. So now I was able to drag my component, but then I can go back to right click here, then to edit definition. And then what I'll do is let's do a new constraint where I'm gonna select that face and that face. Yes, you could establish a 35-degree angle if that's what you're looking for, or let's make it coincident so we can continue building our a little wall. So I click on that face and that face, and not distance, I want to make it coincident. There we go, and I'll click on OK. As you start to see, we are in 3D. 3D, there's 3 planes, which means that there's always a minimum of 3 constraints that you would have to establish in order to fully define the position of one of these objects, which is why it's always 3 constraints that you're establishing per little part that you have in here. You see, you have all of these planes that are a little bit cumbersome to see. I can hide it in there, and I can hide it in there. You see how these are all the same parts, which means they end up disappearing for all of them. Again, to do that, I can also go back to our original sketch in here, and that extrusion, say I modify it to 20, and I click on OK. Then if I go back to the assembly, it automatically adjusts. So there's an one-to-one referencing between the part that you have open in there and the parts that you brought in here in your assembly. I could also go here to sketch, go over to this face, do a little construction line over here, and draw a little circle. We can make that 20. Let's do 20. There we go. Okay. By the way, if I left it just like this and I went back to the assembly, you will see that that sketch appears. The same thing goes if now I go to extrude, I select that, and I'm going to remove 20 as an example. And from our brick, it accordingly modifies itself here in the assembly environment. So it's pretty smart. I think this is honestly super useful. There's a lot of room for creativity in order to do a lot of things. As you got these bricks, and hopefully later on in the next session, we're gonna learn how to create very easily multiple versions of the same brick. Instead of having to create different parts for the brick, you'll be able to create configurations based on here. There's only one plug, one peg that is coming out. What if I wanted 8? What if I wanted the brick to be much bigger? That's what we're gonna learn next week. For now, we're just focusing on assemblies. One last thing that you could do that we've learned. Let me just minimize the which we learn also with the part environment, that you can also create patterns out of these things. I can go to that brick as an example, and then go over to pattern, and instead of I go for direction, I can click on that edge and say that, all right, so we made the thickness 100, if I'm not mistaken. So what if I made that 100 as well, and let's create 5. Let's go to, actually, I'm wrong. I think it was 50. Well, actually, I don't remember exactly. Let me go back here. How big did I make our brick? So that was 100 by 180. So let me go here, and let me go back to the pattern in there. So, oh no. Let me edit over there. Spacing, there we go. I think I know what's going on. Because file, prepare, model properties, I did not change the units. So I have to do that too in the assembly environment. I'll click on set, okay, close. Yes, that's updated. So now if I go to our friend, the pattern, and I click on edit, yes, that is fine. So now I can click on 100, go to okay, and you see that now they're all touching each other nicely, which is the way it's supposed to be. So you can create patterns like that. Just notice one thing is that whenever I did that original pattern, it only allowed me to select, say, an edge of the previous stuff that was already there. This is the same issue as when I want to do a circular pattern, a rectangular pattern, whatever it might be, the axis that you're going to select has to be created before the thing that you're intending to do. Just a little note. For instance, let me show you here. If I chose brick number 1 and I wanted to do a pattern of this one, actually, hold on. Let me go back in time. Let me do Control Z. Let me see whether I can delete that pattern. Oh, but it deletes. Hold on, let me Control Z there. Well, I think, well, I cannot come to get there, but I think I should be able to. Let me see. Yes, I can hide those objects if you wanted to. So I probably will do that. But let me try to see if I can do a pattern just, there we go. So if I did a pattern just of the middle brick in there, the only brick that appears that is visible is all the stuff that came beforehand, which is the first brick. So just like a note to clarify some things. One last thing I'll show before we get started with today is that, yes, I could go over to the brick, and this is great. I could color it here. So I could go over to view, appearances, let's say gold as an example. Yeah, let's do all intense surfaces. Click on OK. We have our gold brick. Let me click on save. Now if I go back to our environment here, Yes, all of them become gold, so that's great if you want it all to be the same color. However, what is great about the software in here is that you can change individually the colors of things in the assembly environment. So we go, well, you even have it here. You don't even have to go to view, even though you do have it there. I can go here to view, say choose brush, and if I selected that, I can change the color of one of them like that. Let's do aluminum. Let's do intense surface. And I can change it individually there. So you can get, say you had a wall made out of Lego bricks, you can change the color of each one of the bricks when you're in here. So this is a very basic introduction to assemblies. Now we're gonna make it a little more complex as we start drawing the symbol. So let's get started with that. So I'm gonna go here to new, to a part. I'm gonna call this master. I'm gonna symbol master, and you will see why. Let me go here to okay. Let's go to our picture. The strategy that I like to employ whenever I have a complex looking assembly like this, I mean, this is not too difficult to do. It's not going to be that many parts. But there's a good strategy that we can employ, which could be useful for you guys in the future, which is you have this picture in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a sketch first of the overall outline of this thing. It's a sketch that's going to have all of these tubings. It's going to have this little part in here. And that sketch, we're going to kind of always reference back to that sketch in order to create the next part. So I'm going to create always multiple copies of the same sketch. So, that sketch, I'll create the tube, I'll create that leg, and then I'll save as, and I'll say, right, master symbol leg. So from there, I will create the leg as an example, just by doing projections, converting the entities as an example. So let me illustrate what I mean exactly by that. So I'll go here to sketch. Actually, not even sketch, because we have to go over to file, prepare, model properties, change. I'm going to change the units here to set. Okay. Close. Close. So I'll go over to sketch. Now to this phase. So let's start drawing something. So I'll draw a line, which, by the way, I could also make a lot of these designs as a revolve to make it easier. So let's make that the first pipe as an example. So yeah, we can make that. As always, dimensions are all relative, so we don't need to make this look exactly perfect. So it doesn't look particularly difficult, this pipe. So maybe let me make that a construction. That way we'll mirror things afterwards. So you see how it hits like taper and then it goes up. So let's try to get roughly that design. It'll go like that. Very good. And we have something that looks like that. So yes, we can define that as a 2. Maybe this height in here can be an 8. Then maybe the height between here and there can be 15. And this height in here can also be 15. And this can be, let's say, 12. Yeah, I think that's fine. It seems like the height in here is a little bit shorter, so we can do that 10. And good. Then I can click on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then we'll do a mirror along this line over there. Great. But this is not it. I'm not gonna stop here. I'm gonna keep on creating parts. But then you see that we have something that looks almost identical to what we drew, but it's another inner pipe. So I can say that I want the inner pipe to be like this. So I'm gonna come roughly through here. And I'm gonna go all the way like that. In fact, this line, I can make it construction. And I'm gonna make this come like this, as that little line in here. So yes, this is gonna be a mess of dimensions, as you will probably start to see very soon. But I'm gonna go here to D. I'll click in there, and I click in here, and we'll make that 150. So it's roughly in the half. And then if you want a wall thickness, we said that was 8. If you want a wall thickness of 2, let's make that 6 in here. And then we have our next pipe coming off from there. And I think it seems like overall fine. And then we can say that I want the overall height of this to be, let's say, 250. Right? So overall, you need to make sure that if I make the height of the original one, well, that's 2 times that. I think it was like 300. Each one of the, like, this is like the Russian dolls. You have to make sure that every subsequent pipe that would fit inside would be smaller in length. So you have this in here. So I'll do the exact same thing. So I'll go over for 2, and then I'll go like that. Great. So I'll say that I want that to be 15. I'll click on D. Oh, actually, I have it there. I can make that 10. I can make that 2. Just where we had it before. And now, so that was 24, which means that if I come back with the line like that, let me perhaps continue that. Let me just make that there. Geometry, I'm gonna make the length of that be, so if I made it 12, that would be the same. Actually, would it be the same? Yes. So I'll make that instead 10. So I'm bringing in, it's gonna be slightly smaller. Okay, so we have one of those pipes. So now I click on 1. And let me do that construction. I click on 1, 2, 3, and 4. And 5. And let's mirror this. Let's go over the mirror along here. Excellent. So now we have that inner pipe in there. Let's do one more. So I'm gonna draw the final tubing that will come from here. So this time I'm gonna go for D. D. Clicking that one, clicking that one. We're gonna make a separation of 20. Why not? Then eventually all of these constraints that I'm establishing here, these dimensions, it's something that I'll be able to do in the assembly environment, by the way, once we have all of these pipes created. And then the height of this little one, let's say, no, I'm gonna make that, let's say 15. There we go. Maybe slightly more that way. But you see that on the next stage, now it's like round, because that's gonna be potentially the area where it's gonna attach to something else. So this one, we don't need to really go for something very, very fancy. And then I have to modify something else, but I'll go here for, I'll go like this. We would need to define the distance between here and here to be 2. Excellent, just like that. So that's a common wall thickness. I'm gonna make that, let's say, well, if I wanted to make, yeah, then I think it's gonna be fine. Did I make that 2 already? Yes, I did. I do. So let's click on 1, 2, 3. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And let's go here to mirror. So now we got that. Great. So yes, I know this is looking kind of interesting, but it will simplify so much our design later, because this will all be referenced out of the very same sketch. Great. So we got this. Now, if we go back here, you'll see that there's another attachment piece that comes. This you may remember from seeing the in-person video when we did the music stand, where there's like a tripod of sorts. And when there's like a freeway hinge. So we can cut that in here by, again, remember that we are gonna revolve this. So this is like as if I was just looking at a section of this part. So I can draw like a little ring that comes like that. Yeah, I think 2 millimeters. I might make it thinner. I'll make this. I want to establish that to be undo. Oh my goodness. Let's see whether there's so many constraints. So I'll make that 1. Actually, 2, to be honest, would not be a bad idea. But at least I get to determine that. And we'll make this 15 too. Okay. I think that should be fine. And then you see that the attachment is like a little rectangle. So we can draw another one that will come like this. And I'll make that 15 and then we can fill it that. Great. So this is where we're standing. Then I'll do a little line in here that will represent the, actually, perhaps we'll draw it more closer to here. So I'll say that that's like a 6. And then this circle will represent the hinge position. So we can say 5. Then we'll draw even the all of the little bolts and nuts that we'll include in this piece. And then maybe it would be a good point to now design the equivalent part in the top. So maybe somewhere, that part, by the way, is going to be its own unique thing. So somewhere around here, yes, I'll come with that. So I think it's, if we look at that dimension, I think it will be undo. I want that to be 2, which is, I believe, now that dimension based on prior constraints. Let me see. Oh, yes, that is 2. Perfect. We'll make that. So that was 15. I'll make that one 15 too. Why not? And then the one thing left to be defined is roughly the height from here to here, even though this is not going to be fixed. This is something that we'll be able to modify. It's going to be able to freely slide. But we'll make that 150. Great. And similarly to before, if you look at that design in there, you can have like a little piece that is coming out. But in this one, it's like it's a slightly different design. We're gonna have it as a rectangle. We'll go in here. Let's make that 10. And let's make that 15 too. That way it's like consistent with what we've been doing. And if we come to our line, I'll make that 6. So we can define the circle to be like in the same position. I'll make that, even though I want them to be the same height. So we said that was 5, hence this can be 5 too. Great. So now for that piece in here, I'm not gonna, obviously, because we're looking at like the wedge direction from where we're looking is where I'm not gonna be able to add those details yet. However, I'll be able to more or less establish the length of this thing. So I can go here to line, and I will say, well, I want this line in here is gonna roughly represent where that's gonna go in space. I think that looks fine. The idea, and we'll be able to modify this later, is that if I slide that piece all the way to the top, then that should retract all the way here. And then, yeah, so you have that. And then there's gonna be another little piece that connects to this. So for instance, again, this is something that we'll be playing around as we go. But the idea is that, all right, if I move all of this, then it closes down. So in essence, the maximum that this is gonna extract will be limited really by that line in here. So we go back to our picture. Yes, you see that is roughly there. So maybe we might need to, you see how, yes. So that could be like the close position, but we'll probably go for that. I think that's fine. And then something that I'll do with this is that I want the pegs to actually be circular. Because, when you think about it, this is something that moves. So if you make this like a rubber circular peg, which I've seen in some of these stands before, it's able to adapt to any position that you would have. So I can make that 25. And then we can always come back to this sketch, but this is roughly how I'm gonna leave things for now. Yeah, this is again a lot of work getting to this sketch. So now perhaps the last thing that I could ask in here is, well, how do we continue onwards? I think for now, let's start by drawing most of these parts. And then we'll get to this point, let's put it into an assembly, and then we'll customize what I would say is this top part in here, because there's gonna be a version that is gonna end just like this, which is gonna be the one for here for the belt kit, and one that will have the arm that will be the case for the cymbal stand. So let's get started with this. So I'll go here to okay. Now we got a beautiful looking assembly, kind of nice. So what I'll do is I'll go here to save. So we have our cymbal master, Creo files. Great. So let's go over to actually cancel audio file, save as, save a copy, and I'm gonna call it as, let's call it oh, master one. So we'll always make we'll make or let's do let's go to stand one. I think this is a little bit more generic. I'll go to okay. So let me see. Complete the stand manager. Let me open now. Stand one. Are you here? Yes. Great. Perfect. Just to make sure that we are working from different parts. Great. So let's start. So I'm gonna go over to sketch in here. And I'm not gonna touch the one that we had from before. Instead, I'll do a few projections. So I'll start by doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and actually 6. Go there to okay. This one I will need to make it the construction. I'll go here to a little line. I'll go okay. And then if you assume, as an example, that I could make it hollow all the way up to this point, and that will actually even a little bit less. I'll make it up to 100 as an example. But the most important thing is that there we have to come like that to allow for the thickness, and boom. So now I have that section in there. So what can we do from here? Well, we can start to revolve some things. In fact, now that I realize it, I might do the same thing with that little part over there. So I'm gonna also project this. I'm gonna make that a construction geometry, and then I will complete this like that. Good. Excellent. I'll go here to okay. And now all the way to our friend, the revolve. And our axis is gonna be, let's see, where are you? Here. So if you look at the top, yes, it is a little bit thick, but I think we'll just leave it like this for consistency with our prior parts. But yes, this is gonna be the main tubing over there. Let's continue over with this piece. So in fact, I can actually, to make it look a little bit more realistic, I can go to that face and I can say that I want a circle that will be, how thick did we make this? Was it 12? It was, I don't know, I'll make it, leave it as 15. I'll do just a slight removal of material by maybe 0.5. There we go. That way you can see that this is like its own independent piece. So now we'll go over to sketch, over to this face, sketch. Excellent. And now I'm gonna project 1, 2, 3. I'll go okay. In fact, we can even project that circle, so I'll project that too. Good. And now I will actually, yes, I will complete this area. Then I will do an extrusion that is gonna be symmetric, and we can make that like 2 as an example. I think that should be fine. Let me take a look at the picture in here. So you will see that, you see how it comes in the middle, right? So maybe I'll add a little bit more thickness. Let's say 5. How about 6? Oh, yeah, of course. That's okay, sure. I think that should be fine. Okay. So then the next thing I'll do a sketch over in that face. And now we will come by doing a line, construction line that will go all the way like that. We'll do, yes, I think let's do that 13. And then I'll come with a center rectangle. Oh, that will be solid. And we can make that 5. And then, okay, extrude, remove material downwards through all. Great. So we got all of this stuff. By the way, it's a good point to hide some of these sketches because I don't need them. Let me hide. We got that piping in there. So now what we'll do is go over to extrude to. What can we do? A pattern. So we'll select here. We'll go over to axis. Oh, I just realized something very important. I do not have my axis, so perhaps what I should have done. So here to axis, select that face. So it creates now an axis along the pipe direction. Now we're going to go back to extrude to axis, A3, and we'll make 3 that are going to be evenly spaced like that. Great. So now the next step will be to go over to that and do the exact same thing. Direction, no, the direction axis, A3, 3, angular extent. Okay. So now that cut is replicated in all of those places. Great. So now, I mean, this looks fine. Before I start adding fillets and beautifying, as I like to say, these designs, the one thing that we could add is there's like a little circle part in there that comes to adjust. So we can do that too. And in fact, we will draw those pebbles as well. Those nuts, we will draw them individually later. So what we can do is go back to that sketch in there, go over to sketch. And if we look at the picture, it's as if it's difficult to tell what's the spacing like in here, but it seems that there's like a little rectangle that's coming off from there and a little circular part. So let's see how we can draw that. So we are here. I'm gonna go over to project that line and I'll make that construction. Wait, there we go. Let's make that an 8. And we are just gonna go here to extrude. We'll go for symmetric. Let's say we go for perhaps a little bit more. Let's say 20. Maybe more. Let's see. Let me take a look at the picture in here. It's possible the circle is a little bit more outwards. So let me actually, let me edit this sketch. I'll delete that. And I'm gonna add, there we go, a line in there. I'm gonna make that a 5. And yes, let me now edit that circle. I'm just really eyeballing a lot of these things, but that's okay. 8. Okay. Extrude. Symmetric. Let's say just come back here. You see, it's possible. You see, a lot of trial and error, right? Just trying to get the overall dimensions of this right. I think there it looks better. Great. And now we are gonna do something similar on that side, where we're gonna add like a little rectangle. So we can go here over to sketch, to that. Let's see, what plane was it? Is was it a front plane? No. We go here to cancel. Yes. Yes, there we go. Sketch. Great. I'm gonna do a projection over there. I click on OK. And we are gonna do a little rectangle. I will come like that. Let's make that 10. Let's make that 4. Let's make that a construction line. Go here to OK, and then we can extrude symmetrically as always. Let's do 6. The reality is that this part, the way it actually works, is that it's as if this peg in here, it's not supposed to be a fully connected line. If I had to be completely precise about how this is supposed to look like, this would there would be like a little bit of a cut going on in here. In fact, I can do it. Let me go here to sketch, overdo line. Let me escape that. Let me just do a construction line that will go like that, and then a little rectangle. Yeah, there. Great. Make sure that this is sufficiently long, and yes, you can make that too if you wanted to, because why not? And then come here, do an extrusion, remove material, and I'll say that I want to remove up to, let's say, do reference up to here. There we go. So now this is starting to look a little bit more realistic, like the actual piece. And we'll do this with the other one too. So the idea is that by putting a bolt in there, you're able to attach and those two faces come together. So that's what is happening in there. So let me go here to, I think we're almost done. I'm just gonna do another sketch over in this face. And the last thing to be done is, yes, a circle. I will come in there, make that 4, and remove material through all. Now, yes. Okay, so we are done with the first part. So what I'm gonna spend some time doing now is going here to chamfer and adding some details to make it look a little bit prettier. Maybe I think 1 would be better. There we go. I'll do that through all of these parts in there. Maybe this one could be a 2. Okay, perfect. So now we have this part essentially complete. I'm gonna save it. And the best part about what we'll be doing today is that they're all colored the same. So I can go over to view, then appearances, and we'll just make it all aluminum. So let's see whether we find that in here. Let's find that nice aluminum mate. Let's see. Actually, let me see all. Actually, I don't want, let me try maybe another. Let's see. Silver. Okay, I think that's fine. So I'll go here too. Okay, so let's continue with the next part. So now that we have this, I'll go over back to symbol master over here. And I'm gonna go here to file, save as. I'm gonna call this stand 2. Okay. And now I'm gonna open our friend the stand 2. And literally the exact same approach as what we've done before. So sketch, face, sketch. So now I'm gonna go over to project and we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll click on OK. Then I'll do a line, and that line is gonna come all the way there, and then it will come all the way like that, and then up to the middle, and then like that, and then I'm gonna get rid of that one, and I'm gonna define that height in there to be 30. So once you're happy with this one is simpler, by the way, this particular version. You can go over to, where are you, revolve. I'm gonna select that axis. And now we have this one in here. So then I can hide this, I can hide most planes, but the one that I'll be using, which is that one. So then really the only thing that I'm gonna make exactly like this one is this circle. So what we had said, if we go back to the design of this, it's a 8 and a 1 millimeter offset. Great, that because I want to make it exactly like this. So we'll go over here. We'll do a sketch in this face. We'll do a projection of that line. We'll do that a construction line construction. Let's make that a 1. Let's make this an 8. And I believe, oh, no, I do want to do that. No, but I do want to save. We're going to make this symmetric by 15, if I'm not mistaken. That was how much thickness we are giving it. We'll click on OK. And now we can do the exact same one here. So sketch, face, line. No, I do project that line, great, rectangle. I mean, we had said 4. We had said 10. Oh, by the way, yes, this is not gonna work because that line is not a construction line. Go to OK, sketch, symmetric, and I believe we had said 6. Good. So now this is the point where I'm gonna hide this, and I can do a sketch over in that face, and we'll draw the last line, which is gonna represent the cut. So then rectangle, roughly here. That was like 20. This was 2. And we are going to remove material to reference to that face. Perfect. So now the same procedure, actually we're not done. I need to do another little circular in here. Let's see if I can find you. So if not, center line, very good. Circle. And I believe that was that 5? I think so. If not, I'll come back and I'll check it through to reference to here. Excellent. So now I might do a little bit of back and forth with, all right, let's see. Oh, that was a 4. You see, that was my bad in there. So if I'm not mistaken, that is 1, and that is 1, that is a 2, that is a 2. Like I'm just looking at some of the faces in here. In fact, I might do a little one last chamfer. And so maybe I'll do a round. Let's see how that look like. Okay. A little bit nicer, yeah. I think I'll leave it like that. I think I'm not gonna add more unnecessary details, but I wanna copy the exact same chamfers that I've done. So I'll go here, go to chamfer. So let me go back there to edit that to make that a 4. Click on OK. And now let me chamfer 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. Essentially all of the interior is 0.5. Not there, and why not there too? I'll click on OK. And then around here, we do chamfer. So that's a 1. That's a 1. And then this in here, that's a 2. That's a 2. Perfectly. Over 2, okay. So now we have our next stand over there. This is perfect. So I'll go over to save. And now all of that, view, appearances, silver, and I think it was a silver matte. Excellent. So now here's what we can do. We can already start to build part of our assembly. So I'll go here to new, then we'll go over to new. We'll go assembly, and I'll call this stand assembly. Go to OK. Then we'll go over to assemble. and we will select stand number 1 as our piece. I'll go here to OK. And the one thing I'll do here is that I can either fix it in space like we have it in there, which wouldn't be a big problem, or I could constrain it with respect to the planes. I think just for ease, I will fix the location there. It's not a big problem, and I'm going to hide all of these planes. Meanwhile, what I'm going to do is the following thing. I'm going to go now to assemble, and I'm going to bring stand 2. And well, I can actually even start, I can click on OK, or I can start by defining some of the constraints. If I select this face, and then I select that face, you will see they're coincident, they're touching each other. And this is more, I will add one more constraint, which is I want this face and that face to be, I think that's parallel. So in other, why am I doing this? I click on OK, because now the only direction, you see that it still has a little square. The reason for that is because the only direction that this would be allowed to move is upwards and downwards. How? So if I go over to drag components and I click in here, you see that is exactly what's happening. I cannot, even if I move my mouse, only one direction that it's allowed to go, up and down. So, okay, let's close. So this is nice, it's starting to take shape. So now that I've added that piece in here, what I'm gonna do is first save this. I'll go to OK. Model is not regenerated. Well, I'll come back to that in a minute. But then what let me actually click here, regenerate, and now save. Excellent, now we should be fine. I'm gonna speed CAD the remaining parts, and I'll come back to you when it's time to bring them into assembly and just constraining all of the different relationships between them. Alrighty, folks. So we got to this point. I deleted a few parts, and I kind of cut the video in the middle because I was playing around, bringing some of the parts that we had already cutted, trying to see whether I could create some of the realistic movement that you would normally expect to see here. The reality is that I was kind of over constraining the design every time I added more constraints, and I'll be showing you what I mean in just a second. So I realized that maybe it's not possible to create movement like, say, the collapsing process. I was able to achieve it with one leg only, but once I did it with all three of them, it kind of was not working too properly. So let me show you what I'm gonna be doing right now. So I'm gonna go over to assemble in here, and I'll bring number 5, which is this one in there, so I can move it roughly to anywhere that I would want, and then I can say, all right, I'll click in this face. I'll click now on that one, and I can create a coincident mate. Then we'll do another coincident constraint between that face and that face. So now it's there, and I think these are generally the ones that I'll be using for now. Then another, so look, if I go to drag and I click in there, it is allowing me to do this. It's just that the more components that I add and the more constraints that I add, like suddenly this just doesn't move at all. So you just have to make do with what you have. I realized that I was spending too much time trying to figure it out and I couldn't really make it work. So I'll just show you this part. So now if I go back to assemble, click on assemble again, I'll bring stand number 6, which is this little part. So I click in this face and this face and make that a constraint, then this face and this face, then this face and this face. Let's see. No, I want it to be coincident. Let's see. If I click on OK, now I wonder, all right, why isn't this working? Is my question. Let's see. Let me delete this one. I'm gonna add one where, let's see if I can establish something. There we go, perfectly. I go to OK. And now this is mostly fine. The thing is that now if I click on drag and I go over to that point, you see that I move my mouse up and down and nothing happens, which is fine. It's not a problem, but well, it's just a result of over constraining these pieces. And I'm pretty sure everything seems aligned, otherwise it would have returned an error. I don't know. Anyways, we go back to assemble. So I'll go over to number 7. So I'll bring these little pegs. So what I can do is click in this face and that face, and then I'll go over here and I'll make offset it by a distance of 1. Very good. Let's bring another one over here. I'll click on that face. I'll click that face. And now this face and that face. And I think that should work. Yes, because that is 9 millimeters. That's the height that I had made it. And now let's bring one more. And you go over to stand 7 perfectly. I click in this face. I click in that face. And now we'll do one more face. And I think that should be 0.5. No, but negative 0.5. There we go. It works excellently. Good. So now we have all of these guys left. One thing that I did earlier was that I created an axis that is along the edge of that pipe. It is just along that pipe. So what we can do now is go to number 6 or number 5 as an example. Click on that button, then over to axis, that one. Then you can say free angular extend, and now I have 3 of those pegs. It's 3 of those legs. I mean, then let's do it with number 6, axis, angular extend. There we go. So you have to do it obviously as you. Oh, actually, I just realized something. I did not change it to free. Otherwise, that would have been a problem. Then let's go to 7. Let's do it here too. Axis, 3, angular extent, excellent. Let's do it here. Axis, there, number 3. I think, let me modify that. Was that angular extent? Yes. Yes. So let's do it one more time with this one. Axis, A1, angular extent, 3. Excellent. So there it is, completed the main base of our stand. So now we can start to customize some of these things. Unfortunately, again, if you go to drag and I click, say for instance, in that pipe, that part works. That is because it's very few constraints. However, for some reason, it seems that whenever I click on any one of those ones, even though it does show properly as being not fully constrained, I just cannot move this at all. Bueno, is it nothing? So I'll spend some time at some later point trying to figure that out. But in the meantime, I want to continue doing some more of this. So we got into this point. Now I can design, well, that I'll do later of designing that little piece. But we can continue on the, well, actually, you know what? I'll design that peg right now. So I'll go over to new part. I'll call it stand 8. Let's do that one quickly before I'll continue with anything else. So prepare model properties. Let's change the units. Is something that always has to be changed in every single part that you do, because otherwise you might end up in inches, and that's gonna be 25.5, 25.4 times bigger than anything that we would want to do. So I'll draw here a little circle, and we know that I think we made it 4. That's how much we had given it. And I think the height we had made it 15, which means we can extend this by, let's say, 18. Something along those lines. Great. Now we'll do a sketch over on that top height. And let's do a little rectangle that we can make 4.5. Let's make this, I think 25 looks good. We'll bring that up by 5. I think that should be fine. Growth. And now we can do a bunch of, not a round yet, but I'll do a chamfer. And we'll make this a D1, D2. Let's make that a 1. Actually, that could be, let's do that 10. And let's do 1. Good. So let's click here. No, it's not gonna work on that one. Let's see whether it works there. Not on that one either. Let's see here. Yes, okay. Now, let's see there. I think I have to invert the numbers. There we go. I go to okay. And now I can do a little chamfer. Again, let's do D1, D2. Let's do 10 as well. And 1. I like it. This is good. This is good. Just to make it cleaner, we can do 2 chamfers in there. Actually, no, not necessarily there. Let's see here. Good. How about there by some very tiny amount? Okay, so let's hide all of these planes. Here's the idea is not to make something very fancy, right? It has to at least be recognizable. Actually, one more. But speaking of that, I did forget one chamfer that I wanted to add there in that edge of 0.5. Now, yes, I'm gonna select all of these, go to view, appearances, then over to, I think we're using bronze. So I'll go here to save, stand 8, yes, in Creo files. So then we can go over to our assembly, And now assemble number 8. And I'm gonna, where are you here? I'm gonna select that face and that face. And then let's see. I kind of want it to be facing the other side, but it's fine. We can. Let me see whether I can flip. There we go. Perfect. Now a new constraint where I'm gonna select that face and that. And that face. Did that work? No, because I want that to be coincident. There we go. Now that's something that we're gonna need to correct in just a minute. I'll come back to that. In the meantime, let me import another one over here. So let me select this face and this face, flipped, and then one more constraint where we have that face and this face. Oh, and I know exactly what happened, which is I did not make that one coincident. There we go. So then we go back to our original piece in here. What we can do is in extrude 1, edit, we'll need to make that maybe 25. Well, that might be too much. Let's see 22, whether that would work. So let's go back to our assembly, and you see that that is a sufficient distance. Cool. So we got to this point. It's a good point to save, yes, to regenerate and save. By the way, something funny is that if I go to drag component over to, oh, it's actually not even, I think because of the way I created the constraints, it doesn't allow me to, let me see what would happen. So on stand 8, if I click on drag, oh, because I can move it around like that, I see. And it was just a fun thing. So we got this thing. So now we can go back to this design. So maybe what would be useful in here is to create, I will probably create 2 versions of this assembly. I will create assembly 1 and assembly 2 once I end up modifying that part. Maybe in the meantime, let me open this part. So this version stand assembly 1, we're gonna leave it like this for the version that we're gonna use for the bell kit, because we can just place the bell kit, assume, on top of this piece. That's gonna come later. Instead, what I'm gonna do is a copy of this part. So file, save as copy. I'll call this stand 9. In here, let me go here to file, open stand 9. But maybe just in case I want to close number 3 and all of those other pieces. I won't need those pieces anymore. So what I'll start doing now is cutting this. So in essence, I'm going to modify the top part in there, and then I will cut like a circle that's going to have, that's going to go all the way like that. It will be simple if I try to modify that piece, then a circle, and then another integrated piece. So it's 2 more pieces than what it ended up cutting. So I'll come back to you once I'm finished with that. Alrighty, so now we finished this stand in here. This one has the symbol and the overall assembly. Well, I think it's looking pretty good, despite the fact that for some reason, whenever I click on the drag command, I believe I may have over-constrained this design, which means that it doesn't allow me to move this up and down, but believe me, that's the way the mechanism should theoretically be. As you can see, I added a few details in here where I ended up changing this piece to make it look a little more realistic, in the sense that, yes, you would tighten it using what appears to be this knob, and then you have this sliding rod that will come all the way through this piece, and it attaches to another one at the very top that then contains the actual symbol up there. And now we're going to continue with something that is going to be even more interesting, which is going to be the belt kit. We're going to design this piece in here, and that's going to be sitting above this, which is the piece that you can see over here. The approach that we're gonna take is design the black piece as just a single part, including all of the different pegs where all of these will be sitting, and then we will go one by one designing each one of the keys. And so that's probably something that I'm gonna speed CAD, so I'll come back to you once I've designed all of this and we are ready to create an explosion of the two assemblies. Excellent. Alrighty, so we got all the way to this point. I kind of realized when I was designing each one of the keys, or just really only one of them, there would have been a lot of work to go through different parts to make each one of these keys, which we have 19 here, and then we have 13 in the top. So it's a lot of keys. So I think it was better to just simplify the process by making a single part for the bottom keys and another part for the top keys, as you can see here. And the overall result is pretty decent. I think I'm pretty satisfied with this overall. So we have this completed bell kit in here and the completed cymbal stand that you can see over here. Just a couple of things that I wanted to mention before we proceed into the next stage is that suppose that you have a view like this one, right? You like this will be called an isometric view because you're not quite looking at this. Let me show you. If you go here to manage view, to the view manager. Let me see if I go to orient. So this is the bottom view. This will be the front view where you're looking at this all the way from the front. But say you wanted a view that looks something like this, which is the isometric view, right? Which is, say I will take a screenshot of this thing and I want to have like a nice orientation that shows you more with some perspective how this would look like. Then you would position it roughly like that. And then once you're happy with the positioning, here, let me go back again to this tab. You go to where it says Manage Views, View Manager. And then in here, it says Orient. And then you click in here and you go for New. And I'm going to create in here something that's called the isometric view. Oi. So I'm going to click in here and I go to Close. So then if I go back to View Manager and then all the way to Orient, I can go to Bottom, which is where we were, and then Isometric View brings us to the one that we just created. So something useful to have in mind, this will come in handy when we do drawings and we want to show specific views of how this would be looking like. So we got this thing. Then the next thing I want to show you, it's something that's called exploded view, which is that little tab that goes in there. But right now we have our assembled stand, but it would be nice to show it disassembled, because that way we can potentially create an animation or potential drawing that says, well, this is the way that it's supposed to come together. If you click here in exploded view, you see, oh, that's interesting. Well, this is not necessarily the exploded what I want to click. So let me just click again in there. We'll assemble it again. If you want to create your own exploded view, you go back to here to View Manager, and then you go to where it says Explode. Yes, so the default explode, this is the one that we just saw, which is, I guess, the one that Creo chooses that it automatically creates. But we can create our own. Let me just go back here to, so I'm making that view. So I'm gonna go here to New, and I'm gonna call this Explode number 1. So let's start, I click on Enter. So, and then you right click in here and you go to Edit Position. So what are we gonna do? You can click in, for instance, that little peg, and I'm gonna bring it upwards like this. So I can start to drag each one of the components. You're not breaking the constraints that you created. You're just dragging them around temporarily to create this view. So I can leave it here, and then I'm gonna click on, for instance, our plate, and I'm gonna bring it like that. Then I can bring, for instance, I can click in one piece and control another piece, and I can bring them both at the same time upwards. And then I can click in just one of them, so on and so forth. Let me just move it. So I'm gonna move quite a few. So let's move these two. I'm gonna move them here. Then I'm gonna click just on that one. I'm gonna move it there. That one. I'm gonna move it here. So it's gonna get a little bit tricky. Let me, yes, they're both should be selected with these pipes because they're too long. So I kind of don't want to create a mess in here. So I'll just select these two at the same time, and I'm gonna move them here. And the peg will come off like that. And then we have that one, we'll leave it there. Then for instance, I'm gonna click on all of these guys. And I'm gonna move them outwards like this. And then just on this guy, There we go. I'm gonna move it slightly forwards, and then all of the pegs, we're gonna move them back, or like up, like there. No, there we go. So I want to continue. So I'm gonna still do the exact same thing with each one of these parts in here. So obviously, the more parts that you have in your assembly, the more involved this process will be. That is out of the question. I'm gonna leave that there, and then I'm gonna select all of those little pieces, and we are gonna move them backwards like that. And from here, I'm gonna move that piece there, and I'm gonna move that one there, and maybe this back. Let's select all of those. Because even though this is a bit of a restricted view with the piece outside on the back, but we're gonna be looking at this like this, I would imagine, kind of floating everything in space. And now we're gonna bring these guys downwards and forwards like that. And then 1, 2, 3. There we go. So once you're happy with what you've done, you click on OK. And very importantly, right click here and click on Save. That's fundamental, because otherwise all the work that you've done is not going to be saved. So we got our stand in here, mostly disassembled. If there's anything that you would like to change about this, you can do it. Actually, by the way, let me click here in exploded view, and you see how it comes back to the original configuration. If I click back again, this is now the new default, the one that we created. So go back to manage views, view manager, and if you are here in explode one, I can go back to edit position, and I can say, well, actually, all of these ones, I'm gonna bring a little bit downwards, so otherwise it's kind of tough to see how everything would come into play. But then there's something even more interesting. Actually, 2 more things I'll mention before I go into something more interesting. Is that you have this piece. You can also, if you go back here, you can rotate things. So all we've done so far, it's a translation. That's the proper word to describe what we've done along the X, Z, or Y directions. But if you click here where it says rotate, what you could do is select like a piece. Well, actually now it's removal. I can select like one of these ones, and then it's gonna say, well, along what axis are you gonna rotate? So the reality is that I don't really quite have any axis being shown. So if I go over here and I say axis display, I can say, well, I want to movement reference. I want to select that axis, and you'll see that now. Okay, I'm gonna leave my peg like that. So it's just like, like a fun thing. That's one thing that I wanted to mention. The other thing is that you can go over to where it says motion, and you see right now, every time, if we go back to the linear translation, every time I move a piece, I can move it. You can hear it's giving you, it's like continuous. It's always, in a way, I can drag it freely without a problem. If I clicked in here and I said 2, as an example, you will see is that if you go back there, I'm moving in increments of 2. I think it's not that easy to see, so let me do 10 as an example. Every time I move my mouse, it will only allow me to move it 10 at a time. And you see that the number up there changes also by 10. So that's something interesting. Good. I'm gonna bring it back to 0. This move with children situation in there is something that we didn't do today, but that's called it's called sub-assemblies. Whenever I bring an assembly inside of another assembly, so you want to move all of the pieces of that assembly together. Well, let me hide again these axes. But actually, having shown those axes, that's a foreshadowing to what we're gonna do right now, which is called explode lines. So we have our exploded assembly right here, but what we would need to figure out is how do each one of these parts come together? So how do you do that? Well, you go here to that little icon, which is the same one there. You could click in here, and let me illustrate what this does. If I click in this pipe and that one in there, and then I go to apply, it creates a very simple line that tells you, well, this is the way that this will be coming together. I can do the same thing with this and that. I click on apply, and it very nicely creates a line. Now, if you, let me just close for a second. If you don't like that line because, for some reason it's not properly displaying how this is coming together, well, you can go here to edit the selected line, and I can modify a little bit the way this is supposed to look like. I do not like this line, so I'm gonna do another one. So let me create one that will go from here all the way there. Let me click on apply, and let me see whether there's a better way. Now, let me go here to close. I'm gonna select this line and edit, because I want, in a way, that little point. You see how the point is coming from there? Maybe I'm gonna select, no, I'm gonna delete it. Let me create yet another line. What happens if I select that face and that pipe? There we go. So this is a little bit more like what I was. No, let me close. Let me see if I can drag that. No, like it's kind of ending the point there. I kind of don't want that yet. I'm gonna try one last version, which is that face and that face. Let's see. And yeah, I think this is a little bit better. Wait. Okay, that's fine. So let's keep on creating lines. So I'm gonna create now a line that will go from here to there. That's an easy one. Then I'm gonna create another one that goes from here to here. That's an easy one. Then one that shows, I suppose, this pipe and that pipe. Yeah, so this, you can start to see how it becomes a bit of a mess. And so I can click in here, edit, and we could potentially see if I can, yes, I can drag this downwards, that way it's not too crowded. Maybe I'll leave it there. Very good. Let's just keep on doing a few lines. Okay, so this is gonna be a fun one. I can do this and that, apply, this and there, apply. So really, how many, sometimes you don't need these lines to show how things are coming together, but in certain cases where you have a big assembly, this can be useful to really show how things are, being assembled. Sometimes it's just very obvious, right? But not in this case. I think this is less trivial, in my opinion. I think that one comes there. I think this one comes here. Then I believe that one comes here. Then we can say, well, this would go there. That's a fun one, right? Like to create that diagonal line. Apply. Let's keep on it. We're almost done. Because, well, actually, now that I realize it, that one should be there. So you're kind of making a line for all of the constraints that you've drawn. There we go. Actually, no, those two are incorrect. Let me see. I'm gonna click in here and I'm gonna delete that one. I'm gonna delete that one and I'm gonna create one that will go from here to here. And one from here to here. Yeah, so you can see how there's a bit of a movement going on. Then from here to there. Then from here to here. So it's essentially like making a Lego if you're following the instruction lines. And that's what we're gonna do in a minute once we create an engineering drawing that will, or we can provide additional details on how exactly this is being assembled together. So I think this is more, no, I'm forgetting one more, which is that one. Yes, it's a bit of a big sea of lines, I would say. Let me edit this. Oh, and that one, where it's supposed to go. I did not indicate that yet. Okay, that's fine. Let's do suppose that and that. Let's do apply and then yes, I should do this pipe and that pipe apply. And finally, this piece is supposed to go here. And this one is supposed, oh my goodness, it is a bit of a mess. It's supposed to go here. So you have these exploded lines. Whether you choose to include them or not, that is up to you. It depends on what your design is. Perhaps I could have done just one side in here and a few there, or provide additional details, and that would have been enough. But you could, for instance, leave like an exploded view that would go like that. So I'll go here to OK. Let me save. There we go, close. So now if we hide the exploded view, you see that we're here. And if we click back in exploded view, we come there and you can see all of these lines again. Now, before we proceed into making drawings, there's one thing I want to point out, which is the following. If you come here and you look at this assembly, one thing that you can do is go here to applications and go to animation. This is a very cool feature available here in Creo. So what you could do is go to new animation and create like an exploded animation. I'll click on, actually no, we already had one, so I can delete that. So you go here to key frame sequence. And what you can say is that, all right, in 0, I would like this to appear as an exploded. So you go to OK. And then at second 10, I would like to show this exploded. And I can follow the explode sequence. So go here to OK. And now what you can show is how this would happen. That's obviously pretty quick, the way that it happened. But once you save this video, you would see it actually in like real time. And then one thing that you could do is you could also create another time sequence where you start from the explode at 10. And then, well, I could have done this on the, actually, let me cancel it here. I can right click, edit key time sequence, and then I'm gonna add an exploded in time 20. I'm gonna go here to follow the sequence perfectly. So then if you go to play, yes, you can see it doing its magic. Oh, I didn't, let me edit key time sequence. Let me see preview. So I think they might be doing it in real time. So it's disassembling each one of the different parts. Sometimes a few of the very little pegs are kind of difficult to see. So we could also modify some of the timing at which this is happening. And now it should be starting to put things together again. We should be on the latter 20 seconds portion. Interesting. I'm fascinated myself. Like these are all the different steps that we took in our exploded view. So it's assembling that piece there, it's bringing that in there again perfectly. So it's building our symbol stand. That's kind of smart. And the last peg. Excellent. And then you can go here to, okay. The problem is that it doesn't appear here on the top. Let me see. What happened if I go here to? Right, let me see it again. Hmm. Let's see whether this would work now. Yes. Okay, so now it's working. I think I should have extended that towards a little bit more time. But good, if you're happy with what you have in here, this is again a very, very simple animation. You go here to where it says playback, and then you can go to the save button and you can save your animation in here. So I can go for whatever resolution that you're happy with and then save it as either MPG or maybe another file type of your choosing. And then you can just play around and make some fun things with this. I have not personally explored much this animation tool, but this is the very simplest um, application of it, where you can just show how this is coming together. So I'm gonna close this and I'm gonna save it. Is a restaurant that you want to say yes. We can save it, save, sure. And now you're back here. Oy. In your original assembly. So yeah, so now we're gonna continue with the engineering drawing. Alrighty, I think we're ready for the last step of today, which involves how to create engineering drawings. Before I do so, I wanted to mention one last thing, is that in the process of stopping the video and now continuing with this last aspect, I was able to also create an exploded view of what we can see here. If you go to exploded, you can see I created well, let me click again. Oh, it's just like contracting, but let me go here to view manager. Let me go to explode. Let me activate this for a second. There we go. So I just wanted to show that I created a simplified version of an explosion, right? I left kind of those two legs there. I didn't really want to move them, right? But this is just another way that you could also achieve the same exploded view, similar to how we did with the symbol stand. Um, and you're still able to convey most of the information of how this is supposed to be coming together. And by the way, all of these different lines are the exploded lines that every time I click them, they will appear highlighted here in our main interface. So we're ready to create an engineering drawing. I've mentioned this a couple of times before, but maybe you may not already be aware of what an engineering drawing is. So let me show you. This is an example of an engineering drawing from another How to CAD from IUP of this past year, where we're taking a Lego brick and we're putting it into a sheet of paper, and we are providing some key information, including the dimensions, maybe some annotations in terms of how this is supposed to be CADed, but more importantly, how this is supposed to be manufactured or assembled when in the case of an assembly. So if you look in here, you have things like, oh, this is the top view, this is the side view. You have things like, oh, let me come back here, like the date, or notes like that things are in millimeters. In here, overall, this is just a very standard way of making a drawing where you have an isometric view. That's the name of a view here on the top right corner. And then this set of four views that show you the side, the top, the bottom, and another side view. So you have like most angles from where you would be able to see this figure. And then when you take this piece of paper, you can manufacture, you can build it yourself. We are gonna make instead something more similar to this. So I was playing around earlier, trying to build an engineering drawing that, in fact, you'll be able to see this one in particular, how I made this one 8 times the speed, as I always speed it up. But I'm gonna do together the engineering drawing for this, which is the symbol stand. So I'll come back to this in just a second. But I wanted to mention that what we're gonna do, instead of doing the engineering drawing that I showed you, which is this one, which has like a lot of dimensions, we are gonna work through something that is more like this, more higher level. You have an assembly, and I want to tell you how things are gonna be coming together. So fortunately, we were already able to include all of these different exploded lines. And now what we have in here is then this table that is called a bill of materials, a BOM, and it indicates that we have different items. We have 11 unique parts, but these parts may appear more than one time. For instance, 9 times stand 7, which corresponds to the little, it doesn't even appear here, stand numbers. No, stand 7, I mean, that's part number 10. I was looking at the wrong thing. It's the little pin in here. That's, I suppose, where that arrow is going to be pointing in there. So we're going to learn in just a minute how to get a drawing like this one, how to add text, how to add these annotations, and then if you go to the next view in here, how to perhaps add a few key dimensions. Really, this is more like these are the necessary dimensions. If you were to package this thing, you would put it inside of a box. So I'm telling you, right, this is 562 millimeters tall, 257 on the side and 355 on the other side, as an example. So very high level, but you would put these dimensions the same way that you create a sketch in Creo. Nothing too fancy from there. So it's like similar to this. I would just add dimensions. The only difference is that in this particular drawing, I added a lot more dimensions because you have fillets, you have pockets, different features. While here we're keeping it simple. In fact, I'm kind of gonna make a copy out of these drawings in just a minute because it turns out that in Creo, it's kind of tough to create this box that you see here. In other softwares, I have found it easier to be able to edit the drawing interface. Here in Creo, there's a great deal of manual labor that one has to do. So let me go ahead and show you how you would do this. Actually, before I do, I would like to see if I go to my picture in here. Yes, I need to hide that. And then if you go back to the drawing, in here you will see that, yes, they do not appear. So I was just confused for a minute why I was showing that particular sketch. So suppose you are starting now from scratch. You have an assembly like this one, or an object, whatever part it may be. You want to make a drawing out of this. How would you do that? Well, you go over to File, then over to, let's do New. And I'm going to create a drawing, and I'm not going to name it yet because I'm going to make a copy of the other one to get like the overall format the same. But I call it drawing 1. And then it's going to prompt you to choose a format, a template, really. For folks that know about drawings, you may already know which one you want to select. But for folks that do not know about drawings, just like me many years ago, you will realize that there's a lot of choice. So you might wonder which one you should choose in here. The reality is that all of these numbers are different standards. And they correspond to different sheet sizes, might be used in different industries. A4, fortunately, I recognize it because A4 corresponds to the size of a sheet of paper. So I would go for that one. But if you wanted to be even more creative, you could go for empty and establish it yourself. So I can say that I want a portrait format on the A4 paper, and you can go to OK. And you will see that it literally gives you an empty drawing in here. You could go here to sketch and start drawing. For instance, if you want to make it look like this, well, you would draw like a box around it, and then you could draw like a box. So I could draw, for instance, a rectangle like that. And then if you want, you can go over to table and I don't like add like a table there. A lot of different things that you could do. I'm gonna delete this for a second. This is a lot of labor work. We're going to avoid it in just a minute. But if you want to go through this approach, I just wanted to point out that, let me go back to sketch. Otherwise, it's not going to work. If I double click in that line, I could go here and make that thicker. And I can say apply and close. And you'll see how now that's a thicker line. But no, this is not what we're going to do. I'm going to go to where it says size A4. And in here, I'm going to go to browse. I go to A, open, okay. And you see that now this is really the template that we'll be working from. I do not want these lines that I created, so let me get rid of them. The problem about going for this approach, which is the easy one per se, because you're taking the pre-created template by Creo, is that I cannot edit these boxes in here. Apparently, it's possible, but it's kind of difficult to do it. So you might need to take it as given. And that's a problem because if you look at the drawing that I was doing in here, you see that I have a lot of white blank space that I'm not quite filling up with anything. Haven't been able to come up with anything and any other details that I would like to add in here. That I honestly I wouldn't want. Like I could do getting rid of those lines in there, but I can't. You have to leave them in here. But that's okay. We can go back here. So just to give you an idea of a couple of things that you could do, you could go to layout. You could choose on, you could actually bring a picture if you wanted to. Say you have a company logo, you can click in here and the same way that we've always done, bring a picture, and you can generally that would be the area where you would be placing that, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go here to general view and I'm going to start bringing model views. So let me go to OK, and I can click in here. It's easy for us to do this because we are working already from a part that is already open, right? Let me cancel. Let me go here to OK. So it automatically like detects that this is what we're working on. But generally it helps to have, the part that you want to work from and you're creating a drawing out of that. Otherwise you can like change it later. But if you go here, you can bring a part, you select it where you are, and I can say, all right, I want the back view. You click on apply. So it's showing you the back view in here. This is going to be the first initial reference view that we'll have. If I click in bottom, it will accordingly show the bottom, front, so on and so forth. You can go to not visible area, you can go here to scale, and you can change that. I was playing around, 0.2 seems to be working. If you click on OK, I can drag this around. Oh, let me see if I can move it. But you can click here where it says scale. You can delete that, and then I'm not sure why there's no. Oh, I don't want to. Right, it was this function in there was enabled, which didn't allow me to move it. But now that I unclicked that, I can move our figure a little bit more. Why is that cool? Because well, you can place it in different parts of your drawing. I can have it there. Well, I can have it here as an example. Again, because you have all of this stuff, it's kind of bothering, but it's okay. We can survive that. Normally, if you look at our Lego brick drawing from the previous time that we taught how to CAD, you see that we have a set of standard views. And we can introduce these ones by going here and then go to projection view, and I can add them like this. I can go here, projection view, I can add them like this. Obviously, what you're noticing is that these occupy a lot of space. It's difficult to compress them all into our drawing space. So I can double click in this view in particular here, and in scale, let's change that to 0.15. I click on apply, and because all of these are views that are dependent on this one, in fact, you see how if I move the primary one, all of the other ones should move with it as well. The scale changes accordingly. One thing you notice is that if you don't want, now it's being shown as fully colored, but if you want to show it shaded, what you can do is go here to properties, edit, and now I believe it is in view display. Let me see if I can find it here. Instead of follow environment, I can go for hidden. Well, I can do wireframe. Let me click on apply. So what it's showing here is essentially if you were to make it black and white, as an example, all of these lines. But then let me go here to, I can change some of the parameters here. That way it's not as busy, because you see how some of these lines now they're overlapping, so it makes it a bit troublesome to see our view in here. So if I want to change it for that one, if I wanted to change it for those two, I would need to replicate the same process. But I think I like it more with the shading with edges. I go here to apply, and that's what we had earlier. I go for default. I don't think it changed much in the end. Good, so that's one thing. And now I'm here in view states. I always get confused view states and view displays. If I go to explore components in view and I go to apply, you see that now in this particular view in here, it's being shown that this assemble. Now, this is the default. I think maybe you remember from a couple of minutes earlier, this is the default exploded view. I am not sure whether it remembers let me go here to, okay. Let me go here to manage view manager. All right. So we may need to actually redo the exploded view because it appears that it has been lost. So I'll be working on that in just a moment. I'm gonna come back to that. But let me just show you first here the drawing. So suppose let me just double click in here. We go here to view display. View states, there we go. I don't want the there we go. So I'll go apply. Okay. So I'm gonna leave it as it was before. But now you can go over to sketch. Well, actually, annotate. So dimensions. So I can click, for instance, in that line. Then I can hit Control. Then I can click that line. And you can see that now, just like we've done before, I can add dimensions. Now, here, in order to place it in a particular location, I'm going to click the ball button in the mouse. And now this has been placed. So I have my 0.66 in here. Good. And I can add maybe another dimension in here and make that 4.6. Remember, the units in here are in millimeters. So I can add, for instance, a note somewhere here that says note, all units in millimeters. Now I can select all of that, go here to font and select your favorite font. For instance, Arial, and I'll make that 0.15 as an example. So that's really what I've done. Like if you look at the template that I already have built in here, I went and I created individual nodes for all of these things. You could also go here and create something that's called a bill of materials. So here, this is the drawing that I would create in order to create like the overall views. If you wanted to show how things are coming together, you would have obviously your exploded view. And then if you go to table, I can go to quick tables. I can bring I'm gonna edit this in a second, but you have a table in here that is your bill of materials. It's showing you for this particular assembly, what are the different parts and how many of each you will need. There's more columns that we need in this table. So I can hover around the top of the columns that we don't like and delete it. I click on yes. That's really how you delete a table. So now you see that this is much smaller. Once you've created a table, it's gonna give you the option to create the balloons. So I can go here to all, and you see that now it kind of creates a mess, but if you have the patience, I can click on each one of these ones and move them to a location. I can go here. Normally, the drawing view that I use to put the balloons and show how the different parts are coming together, which part is which, I wouldn't mix it with a drawing where I also have dimensions. I'd rather leave them separately. That's why you would create two sheets to show different pieces of information. Otherwise, it's too busy. But I can move this here. That one I can leave it there. We will do this again properly. I will show it. But this is like some of the basics. You can also go back to, you can create custom tables, and then you can use this set of commands in order to edit, for instance, whether you wanted to merge any cells or not. In fact, you could potentially create this area in here using a table too. A little bit of work, but you could do it too. So you can do that. And then one thing I'd like to point out here in annotate is that you can not only add dimensions, but if you go here to node, there's a type of node that's called leader node, where I can say, I can click in that face, then I click on the mouse ball button, and I say, this is a symbol. And then double click here, we can change the font, 0.15, for example. So you can add like a little, arrow that indicates specifically something that you'd like to point out, or you'd like whomever's reading this drawing to know about your assembly. What else do we have in here? I think this is really the very basics of how to make a drawing, and now we're gonna make it properly. The reality is that once you are done, well, you can you can add like sketches. You can essentially draw it in whichever you want. Once you're happy, you can go over to save. You can say, well, you would save in a location, then you could save this as. We go here to file, save as, and I'm gonna select where are you? PDF, and you can get a PDF version out of this drawing too. So this is the very basic. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna speed CAD very quickly. I'm gonna make an exploded view of our symbol standing here, and then I'll come back to make a proper engineering drawing. But just one thing that I'm gonna jump ahead into doing is that I'm gonna close this thing. I'm gonna go here to the symbol, which to the belt kit stand. So this is more or less how I would like my drawing to look. So it's a little more tidy in here. So I will go over to File, Save As, and I'm gonna call this one Symbol Stand Drawing Assembly. And now I'm gonna open that one. So symbol stand, where are you? Ooh, symbol stand drawing assembly, open. So I can start to show you some of the things that I would do in here. So first, I'm gonna actually get rid of that view. Stand assembly. That's fine. And now I'm gonna get rid of all of these ones, yes. But I'm still gonna leave these little labels because I'm gonna use them later. And now we can go back to layout, and I'm gonna go over to general view, okay? But now this is the model that is recognizing it here. So now we need to figure out 1 second how to bring like the model that we're interested on. So let me go here to cancel. I'm gonna click here, and I believe we can go here to add model. I'm gonna click, where are you? Stand assembly, okay. And now let's see whether this will work. Yes, perfectly. So drawing models, you add model, and you select the one that you're interested in using here. So let's see whether front view, yes, that is the one that we want. And for scale, we'll do this, even though I'm not mentioning the scale, even though maybe I should. But this is 0.015 of the actual size of this thing. So I'll go here to apply and say okay. And I'm gonna get rid of that. And now we know that if I click in there, I'm not gonna be able to move this. If I unclick, I'm able to move it. Great. I'm gonna play around with this for a second, but I can bring my projected views. So I can bring the first one here. So I'm gonna place it a little bit below. Then I'm gonna bring another one towards the side, just like that. And then general view, okay. What I do not remember is whether I had created an isometric view for this thing. I believe I had not. So if we go back to our symbol stand, suppose I wanted a view that is like this. Like a nice isometric view is really like a diagonal view for your object. So maybe something that looks like that, right? So if you're happy with this view like this, you know where it says manage views, view manager, then in orient, and I can create a new view. I think I've shown this earlier, but I can right here isometric view number 1. I'm gonna click enter, and now if you go to front, it will take you to the front. If you go to isometric view, it takes you to this diagonal view. I close here to close. So then if we return back to our assembly, then general view, no. Oh yes, I had to select where in the drawing, so I'm gonna bring that one, but now I can bring this isometric view, scale, let me go to here to yes, then scale, let me go to 0.015, apply, close, and I can see how it nicely appears there. I think the problem with this particular drawing or this particular model is that it's a little bit taller than the one that we had earlier, which means that I need to edit this, go here to scale, and we're gonna make it 0.12. So just slightly smaller. And in fact, I'm gonna change that here too, that way it's consistent. Good. That way it's like easier to, see everything. I'm gonna place that here. Maybe one thing that it would help is to make a drawing like this one, very well, super detailed, and then you can just save it as and use that as your template. I think it's like the easiest way to create a drawing template, in my opinion. I'm gonna leave this here. I'm gonna leave this one here. Yeah, I'm just gonna leave that like that. And then all that we will be remaining to do is add an additional top view in there, as you can see. And I kind of like it. It looks almost like a satellite from this top view. And then I'm gonna raise this in here. And then a couple of things that we can do from here is going over to annotate, then go here to dimension, and then we can go back to selecting that face, then like here, and you can see that, well, this is higher. Again, these are two specific numbers, 666.04. By the way, by default, it's going to 2 decimal places. Whether you want to include this or not is up to you, but this is really to have a general idea of, well, what is the general size of the object that you're dealing with. So if I look at the bottom view, one that I want to add is here in dimension. Let's see whether this one is possible to add. No, that one inside the circle. I could also maybe go here to sketch. I'm gonna do a construction line that will go maybe like this perfectly. And let me go here to annotate. Let me see what happens if, right. So what's the problem in here? That I'm gonna go back to file, prepare, drawing properties. No, actually, it will be the file. So what I just realized is that it's not, I was about to change the units per se of the drawing, only to realize that the reason why I kept on clicking on that line and it gave like one random number, 1.69, is really because I hadn't, it was not the correct way of doing it. If I wanted to do this properly, well, I would, for instance, go back to dimension, click, for instance, on that point, and then click on like another point or hitting also control of that line in question in here. And you can now, it's gonna display the correct property because it's now with respect to the particular object itself. And that it is this object, the one that was scaled in the first place. Yeah, so you can have it as 119. The point that I was interested on, if we go back to dimension, is I'm interested on like that, like a point around here. But let me see if I can go back to sketch. I'm gonna create a point right there. Good. I'm gonna leave it in here. So if I go back to annotate, I go to dimension. Let's see whether it allows me to, yes, I select that point, control that. Okay, well, it's showing us 213, which is not necessarily the dimension that I want. Let me see, cancel. Go here to sketch. I'm gonna get rid of that. Let me go back here to layout. I'm gonna go, let me create again that bottom view. And I'm gonna go over to sketch and I'm gonna create a different set of lines. I'll start maybe by doing a line that will go like this instead. So now if we go to annotate to dimension, I can select that line, control that point, and now, yes, this is the dimension that I was looking for. Good. Something interesting that I found in the process of trying to erroneously change the dimensions here of the drawing is that if you double click here on the particular dimension that you've just placed, you can change a few things about it. You could, instead of rounding, you could just show all of the decimal points, which would be a lot, or you can even decide how many you'd like to show. The thing, as you can see, is that if I click 0.1, it's not gonna go to 0.0. That's an example. It's just showing 666 because it's just the way that it's rounding by default. But you can do 0.12. Same as I mentioned, or let's see here. This is if you have like a double tolerance. Yeah, so a bunch of different parameters that one would be free to choose, especially if you'd be sending this drawing for machining and you need to provide some tolerances, among other things. You have that dimension, you have that one. So maybe the last one that I would like to show is this one, which is gonna be distance between that point and that point. So that's gonna be 257. Good. So I'm gonna leave it like that. So yeah, so very easily we were able to create a few dimensions here. Maybe just for the fun of it, I might write, I'm gonna add a little note in here that's gonna go scale. And I'll say, I think we'll be doing 0.015 to 1. That is the scale in this particular case. So I'm gonna select all of these, go to font, and go to Arial, and I believe the size is 0.1. I do not know what the size is, 0.12. So let me go back here. I put a 2 there, great. And we're gonna bring that there, good. So that's something that we can add in all of our drawings. One thing I'll mention, which it has been giving me errors when I try to do it, is that I cannot just grab this, do Control C, Control B, and copy paste nodes. Apparently that doesn't work very nicely here in Creo. So you might need to do that manually yourself. So we have all of these different views in here. Now it's time to speed CAD, do a little explosion view, and I'm gonna come back to you to create this view that we have in here. Alrighty, so there we go. We just created our exploded view. One last step that I'm gonna do here is I want to confirm, if I go to the view manager and we go to orient, that if I go to my isometric view, that this is indeed the one that I want. And as you can see, it may not necessarily be the case. I'm gonna first show again this. If I go to explode, let me activate this. And you can see that no, maybe I actually want this view here. So you'll see that you might need to come back and edit your views as needed. I think this one is a little bit cleaner. So I go back to views, view manager. I'll go over to orient, new, and I'm gonna call this isometric view. View 2. Enter and close. I'm gonna save this, and now we can go over to our drawing. And actually, first things first, I'm gonna go back here to where it says table. That's how it will enable me to edit this table. I'm gonna actually delete it because I don't want it. We're gonna create a new one in just a second. There we go. So first things is that I'm gonna come back here to layout, then general view. Okay. When I click here, you see how our symbol stand appears. I'll go over to scale. we'll do maybe a bigger scale. We can probably have it here. I'll go to apply, then do view state, explode view. We'll do exploded one, apply. Then in view display, that will do the same. Maybe here, I'm gonna select isometric view 2, apply. So that's exactly the one that we were using earlier. We may be able to go here to scale and change that to 0.02. Here to apply. I believe that's what the scale is referring to. That this is just, I suppose, a 2% size of this particular piece. It seems correct. Otherwise, I think this is fine. I'm gonna move it here. I'm gonna delete the scale. I leave that there, and you can see how all of the exploded lines that we created earlier, they are appropriately shown in here, indicating how you would be supposed to build this stand. So then I can go over to now to table, go to table, and I will actually, where are you? Here, quick tables, and I'll just create. I go here for that one. I'll click in here. And now if I hover over the top, I'm gonna get rid of the columns that I don't need. So I'm gonna get here. And then if you click here in these points, you're not quite like dragging, you're not quite like changing the size of that. I can show you how you're doing. You're just dragging it from one place to another one. So I'm just gonna leave it here. If you did want to change the size of one of these cells, you go to this entry there and make that a 2. You see how it appropriately changes in here. Good. One very important thing is that I would have to call this symbol stand. That's a big mistake if it stays the same. I'm gonna move you here. Then this is, I'm gonna make you the drawing number 2. This is the second one I'm doing. This is sheet number 1. I'm gonna go back here. I'm gonna change the same thing. What to do? And I'm gonna call you symbol stand. I think that's fine. And then I should add that scale command here. That's 0.015 to 1. And I'm gonna go here to annotate. Then do note, I gotta write scale 0.02 to 1. There we go. And I'm gonna select all of this stuff. Then go here to Arial. We'll go here to 0.12. Great. And we can move this to where it belongs, which actually there is quite fine too. So we got this. So then the last step, if we are here, is even in the table command, you go to where it says create balloons. I'll go here to all. So now we have to carefully click on each one of these ones and move them slowly. I will say that if I move to another part like sketch as an example, it will still allow me to modify this, but it's sometimes better to be in the tab of the thing that you're changing at that time, because otherwise, I think if I'm in sketch, it doesn't let me do anything with respect to the table. Just a little observation that I have from here. But I'm gonna tidy these a little bit. I'm gonna put that 7 in there. Let me see if I can bring that 8 here. We'll make it perpendicular. There we go. I'm gonna spend some time now. That 1 can go here. That 11 can go there. This 10 can go here. So I'm trying to make them roughly parallel, all in a column. Oh, there we go. There we go. 9 in there, but we have a 3 that for some reason is so down below. And what is that? That's a 5 that for some reason should be over here. There we go. I'm gonna leave you with that 2 in here. That way it's not so crowded and it's easier to follow this thing. Obviously, if you had the patience, you could create an even larger multi-page drawing and add how is it, and just be able to create more views and make it show more detail in more detailed ways how things are coming together. You can have like multiple exploded views showing really how this is being assembled, just like a Lego. So I have a 6 here and a 4 there. Excellent. So you got all of our bubbles. Great. One thing I'll mention, which I haven't said it explicitly, is that I can right click here and I can do either a new sheet, in which case I will create a new sheet, or move or copy, and I can just create a copy of an existing sheet that I have. I'll go here to cancel. But this is in a nutshell how you'll be able to make an engineering drawing. So let me go here to save. And now we can go here to file, then save as PDF. I'll go here to OK. Then I'll go OK again. Let's let it think, and you can see how it appears. So this is all nicely being shown over here. So, well, this is it, folks. We've done a lot today. We've learned how to create assemblies. We've learned how to create exploded views. We looked very briefly at how to make a very quick animation showing how this is being built. And we ended here creating a drawing that has a bill of materials. It tells you where each part would be going, and you have some general overall dimensions of this drawing that would be indicating, if you were to place this in a box, how well it would fit. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time for our last session, session 8. Bye-bye.